Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X and on Twitch. And our podcast is entirely supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without you, we couldn't make this show each week. I'll have all the details on how you can become a patron very soon. Today, we are very excited to unveil a new sponsor. So a huge thank you to Peter Self-Drive for sponsoring this episode. Peter Self-Drive are a homegrown Southampton business. They've been trading since 1985. They're also lifelong Saints fans. Now, you might have seen their name around St Mary's. They're currently advertising on the big screens. They do loads to support the Saints Foundation. And not only that, they also love this podcast. So it feels like a perfect fit. Now, they offer cars, vans, trucks and minibus hire at very reasonable rates. They're flexible on short-term or long-term rental needs. They're always available to help, and they operate a 24-hour drop-off service. Now, they're offering TSP listeners 10% off rentals with the code TOTALSAINTS. That's all one word. And you can use the code when booking online or just quote the code when you're booking over the phone. To find out more or to get in touch, head to peterselfdrive.co.uk or give them a call on 02380 474 443. And if you missed any of that information, it's all in the podcast show notes and the YouTube description. So coming up this week on the podcast, 2 home games, 2 wins and 2 clean sheets. There's plenty to talk about. A decent 2-0 win over Cardiff on Saturday, followed a less convincing midweek win over Bristol City. Going to review both of those games. And this weekend, it's a trip to Watford. Going to preview that one later with Peter Remnant from the Watford podcast, which is Do Not Scratch Your Eyes. My name's Martin Starke, and I'm joined by Alfie House, who's senior Southampton reporter at the Daily Echo. Glen de Cour is the writer of the blog League One -10, and it's a welcome back to Fraser Spinney, who's a freelance journalist for Southampton FC News. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 254 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, first up, our regular plug for our Patreon community, whose monthly contributions support the show. There are 4 tiers, ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And aside from supporting the podcast, each of those tiers has perks like access to an ad-free version of the podcast. There's exclusive TSP t-shirts and merch bundles. There's the TSP FPL and access to our TSP events, plus much more as well. Just a final reminder that we are doing a virtual meetup for our TSP patrons on December the 7th. That's going to be at 7:30 UK time. All the invites have been sent out to the active patrons in our top 3 tiers. So drop us a DM if you're having trouble finding it. Otherwise, we will see you on Thursday evening. And if you want to get involved in supporting TSP each month, just head over to patreon.com/Total Saints podcast for more details. Again, all those links are in the podcast show notes and also the YouTube description. So let's get into the football, shall we? Saints extended their unbeaten run in the Championship to 11 games with a 2-0 win over Cardiff at St Mary's. Glen, we said it was all about starting well, and to me, it felt like the perfect start. We were 2-0 up after 15 minutes and cruising to a certain extent.
Yeah, it was a great start. We clearly meant business from the first whistle. I think they'd probably, after the Huddersfield game, been a bit of chat about complacency and trying to avoid it and making sure that we started this game strong, particularly as we didn't start the Bristol game particularly strong. So yeah, 2-0 up in, 15 minutes? Mm-hmm. 2 really good goals. The first one in particular, I think the club have already highlighted on social media that it starts off with the goalkeeper, goes all the way down the left-hand side, and some nice snappy passing on the edge of the box, and then and it's a brilliant finish. Left foot from a right-footed player and curls it into the top corner. It reminds me very much of a goal that Che Adams scored at Watford last season, where there was just no backlift. It was the opposite, right foot into the other corner. But it was a brilliant start, brilliant goal. And with us this season, you're always a bit worried about how the sort of like next 10 minutes after a goal is, how that's going to play out. And we kept the foot on the throat and went forward and scored a second goal. So at that time we were 2-0 up, and the Cardiff trains home got cancelled. So they must have been thinking, we're having a great day here. We're going to get beat 7-0. And
I was joking when I said that was the biggest cheer of the afternoon, but it was certainly up there, wasn't it?
It was up there. It was up there, wasn't it? Yeah, end of the first half, we did kind of let Cardiff have a couple of moments, which Russell Martin alluded to in his interview after the game. So there was the one where Bazunu had to come out and head it, and the subsequent shot from that, and they had one chance where a guy stuck it over the bar from sort of pretty close to the goal. But so yeah, half time we
We appear to have lost Glen.
I was just starting to wonder whether that was me or Glenn. Did you remember when this happened to you last week, Alfie? He could still hear what you were saying, and we were all sort of laying into you. So
best be kind about him, yeah.
We'll be nice and kind about him. Alfie, I'll come to you next. We talked about last week the problem with 1-0, but there was definitely that sort of purpose and style afterwards, which suggested they were determined to get that second goal. They weren't going to let that happen again this week.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, we'd have to be honest and say that Cardiff are probably the poorest side I've seen at St Mary's this season. I just didn't think they really offered anything. Glenn did actually mention just a moment ago, but they had a couple of moments. I think Carlisle Grant missed a really big chance at the end of the first half, which could have made it 2-1. But Adam Armstrong just seems to be, when he gets near the box or in the box, just seems to be a yard quicker than every other defender. And that's exactly what it is this time, isn't it? It comes down from the left, and I think it's Stu that puts it back in, and there's a bit of a melee, and he's quickest to it and heads the ball into an empty net. I think that's like 12 for him this season. It's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? I knew that. I think we all backed him to be a good level championship player because we know he is, but I think he's scoring at a rate that's well surpassed what we probably all thought. And I was speaking to Franny Benali in the week for the column, and he was saying that he felt that a 3-0, 4-0 was coming eventually. And I probably didn't expect it this weekend, so I think I expected Cardiff to be set up quite strong, resolute, but it could have easily been 3 or 4. Adam Armstrong could have had a hat trick. I think he hit the keeper with one big chance towards the end of the game as well. But I think most importantly, it was probably a really important week for Russell Martin, because I think speaking to him this week, and I didn't speak to him yesterday because I was in the stands, I wasn't in the press box. I was watching with my dead pint of Kingfisher. But it was an important week for him because he looked knackered, truth be told. I think it took the toll on him this week. I think he was, he obviously had the sort of discussion with Adam on the radio during the week, and we then spoke about it on Friday. And he was really honest about the fact, he's well compensated for his work, so we don't need to feel sorry for him, but he's tired, he has to make sacrifices, stuff like that. So it was just nice for him, I think, just get the double clean sheet, get a 7-point week again, and we can just start to look forward again with a few days rest.
Yeah, another 7-point week as well. We'll get onto that in a bit. Fraser, welcome back to the podcast. Going to get your thoughts on the game at the weekend. Were you surprised by Cardiff? I mean, they could barely keep hold of the ball for the first 20 minutes. I thought it was going to be a tougher game, certainly for that first half hour.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back. I definitely agree, and I could sort of echo what Alfie says there. I thought out of Cardiff and Bristol City, I thought Cardiff would potentially be the stickier of the two games, and it didn't prove to be that way at all. They were just sort of everything I expected of them, like people referring to of being resolute, hard to beat, sort of physical. They didn't really seem to have any of that, and I think we were just we started fast and we were out the blocks quick, and I mean, once we got that second goal pretty quick, soon after, I think it was 4 minutes between the goals, I think it was a perfect display of how much control you can have from playing this style of football. I mean, Cardiff were very poor, but we didn't let them gain any momentum other than that little spell before half time, like the guys have sort of referred to. Second half was just complete vindication of Martin's style of football, I think. I think it's just Bristol City game was slightly different, but this game, where we had that second goal, it's just all too often is elusive for us. I think once we got that second, it was just complete control and very comfortable afternoon's work. I liked how we set up. I mean, I still have concerns about being out of without Sulemana for this period, because I think it does very much limit our options. I mean, Martin said after the Bristol game, he sort of stumbled across this shape that worked, and I think Alfie referred to it earlier in the season about how Martin often reverts to a diamond. And that's sort of what it is with Alcaraz sort of dropping in off the front, and Armstrong and Adam Armstrong and Che Adams playing a little bit wider. That's not going to work against everyone every week. And that's the worry, is I think we lack a bit of flexibility now, because Ryan Fraser's not been having as big an impact from the start of games. And the other options are, I guess, Dozy playing wide, and he's dropped down the pecking order a bit, not played a great deal of football for us lately. So I think yesterday it was perfect, and it gave us so much control in the middle of the pitch. I thought there were some excellent performances in possession, but I think moving forward, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we adapt with Suleiman out, because he's certainly our biggest threat in behind, and he opens up a lot of space for a lot of players, because players often double up on him, teams often double up on him. So but yeah, in terms of yesterday, I think almost complete control, other than that spell before half time where we just sort of slowed the game down a little bit too much. And but other than that, complete control, really positive performance, I thought.
There were a couple of players, Fraser, that I know kind of stood out for you, but I think, was it Ryan Manning that you were particularly impressed with this week? He seemed to have a really good week, and he got a lot of stick taking those corners in front of the Cardiff fans. But he had a good game yesterday.
Yeah, I think him, Downs, and Martin enjoyed that one yesterday, didn't they? Yeah, I think he's a player that I'll be honest, I think he like everyone, I think he offers a lot in possession, and he's very suited to the style of football. I do have big question marks over him defensively, but yesterday he was pretty good defensively, to be honest. I think he made the most tackles, won the most duels of any Saints player. I think he had 4 or 5 interceptions as well. He was very good, and I think he had 113 touches, which for a left back is quite ridiculous, really, especially in the Championship. But I think, I thought he was really good yesterday, and really sort of positive performance. And I think it gives Martin a really nice, not even a problem to have over this period, because we're going to need Bree and Manning to play their part. And I think they both offer very, very different things, but both have shown that they can step in. I think it's good as well, because I think Martin's shown this season that if you come in and you play well, you keep your place, generally speaking. I mean, he does obviously tweak things tactically, but a lot of the time you come in, you take your opportunity, and you keep your place. I mean, Bree came in on the back of Manning's suspension after not getting a sniff all season, started 5 in a row. Manning came back on Wednesday, played well, and then was one of our best players yesterday. And I think, he offers a lot going forward. He's good on the ball, and he was better defensively yesterday. I still find it frustrating. He doesn't stop enough crosses for my liking, but generally speaking, it was a very good performance from him yesterday. Yeah.
There were plenty of standout players yesterday, Alfie, but I felt the subs as well. When Joe Aribo and Ryan Fraser came on, you were kind of like, well, me, it was like, oh, okay, here we go. But actually, lots of praise for Joe Aribo, and he could be unlucky with hitting just on the outside of the post.
Yeah, he can be, can't he? I mean, look, Joe Aribo was an interesting one, because Joe Aribo is somebody who pretty much every manager has defended to the hill, and especially especially Russell Martin, because I think he sees him as a great character and somebody who's good in the squad, and they will need him. And so I've actually quite enjoyed seeing a bit of praise for Joe. And I think Ryan Fraser has probably done himself a bit of a disservice, in the sense that I can't imagine he'll start many games now, because he just seems to have a much better impact as a sub every single time. And if you've got that weapon, then why would you change that? And I think somebody else who probably deserves a lot of praise for this week, in my opinion, is Shea Charles. And sort of Fraser talks about having an opportunity, coming in and taking it, and making it difficult to displace yourself. Will Smallbones had a couple of niggles or whatever it is that's wrong with him at the moment, and Shea steps in. I think that he's shown that he's got a lot of different sides to his game. I think when we first saw him, it was him playing at centre half right at the start of the season. We knew that wouldn't be the case going forward. Russell Martin said it was, but then we saw him as this sort of disruptive anchor role. Now he's playing slightly ahead of Flynn Downs, who's got that ship settled. You don't need to worry about that. He's starting to express himself a little bit more in transition on the ball. I think he's somebody who is going to be a big player, right? At the age of 19 years old, he's getting good minutes now, and I don't see him take him out of the team, even if Will Smallbone is fit and ready next Saturday.
Just your thoughts on that midfield, Fraser, because I know Flynn Downs is someone that you've got a lot of respect for, and someone that's impressed you as well.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I know he started slow when he came in. He was ill. I think he lost a bit of weight and everything. And since he sort of got into the team and really got fit, I think he's been immense, to be honest. He's shown exactly why Martin was so desperate to sign him. He is so good at controlling the tempo. And he's actually, I have to confess, before he went to West Ham, I hadn't seen a great deal of him. And he's much sort of feistier than I maybe gave him credit for, and he does love a tackle, and he loves getting stuck in. I was very worried that he was going to get a second yellow yesterday, I have to admit, because he got one pretty early on, and I thought Martin might take him off with 10-15 to go, but I think it just shows how important he is to our build up and to sort of maintaining that control through possession. And but yeah, I mean, like Alfie said, he's got that holding midfield role nailed down now. I mean, unless he's injured, he's playing every minute of every game, I think, or injured or suspended. But I like the midfield. I mean, Stuart Armstrong's obviously doing well as that sort of to the left of Flynn Downs, and then to the right you've got Smallbone and Charles. And I think that's good options to have. I think Charles linked up really well with Kyle Walker-Peters yesterday and on Wednesday actually, and I think they got a nice little connection going between the two of them. But yeah, he's a real talent. I think we've got good options in midfield, and obviously Charlie Alcaraz sort of dropping in and floating around suits him like down to the ground as well. He looked a bit tired yesterday, I thought, but he's obviously come back from Argentina with a bit of a niggle, and then missed the Huddersfield game, played against Bristol, so put a shift in, and yeah, he looked very tired. I think we had a few tired legs towards the end of the game, or the likes of Stuart Armstrong. Sort of, he doesn't play 3 games in a week, so until this season, so he looked pretty knackered yesterday, but he did well, and I think we've got a really nice balance in that midfield, and it took, due to sort of players being unavailable or just sort of Martin figuring out his best side, that took a while to settle down. But I think midfield is probably the most settled part of our side now, other than obviously Smallbone dropping out and Charles coming in. But 2 or 3 are Stuart Armstrong and Flynn Downs are probably going to start every game, and then it's Charles and Smallbone battling for that other shirt, I think. And Charles has done. At first when he sort of went into that sort of more advanced sort of 8 role, wasn't sure about it, but he's looked a lot sort of more composed. And I think he had a really good international break with Northern Ireland. I mean, he only played 1 of the 2 games, but got a lot of praise off the back of that, playing a more box-to-box role. And I think he can do that now. And I think he's Smallbone now will have to sort of fight for that shirt back, and it's a good problem to have again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Glenn, were you cut off in your prime then?
Yeah. I was. Yeah, what I said was amazing. You missed it. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
He's gone again. He's teasing us. He's teasing us. We are going to get on to preview the Watford game very soon. First, we just need to talk about Bristol City. We kind of need to cover that off. I got a feeling this won't take long. A Carl Walker-Peters worldie in the end was enough to give Saints all 3 points against Bristol City on Wednesday night. Alfie, that was a very frustrating first 45 minutes, wasn't it? After that game against Huddersfield, we thought we would see a bit of reaction, and for 45 minutes, just something didn't click.
Yeah, they're very lucky, weren't they? I mean, I've actually sung the praises of young Tommy Conway quite a lot this season, and sort of my friends and that, because I think he's a really, really good striker, but he missed a couple of gilt-edged opportunities. I know Gavin made a save or 2 that was really impressive as well, but there was one at the back post, it was a free header, should have been 1-0. Should have been 1-0 again just before half time, like I say, when he tried to round Gavin Bazunu, but they got in 0-0. And then I thought the second half was totally different. I don't know if City were just really poor in the second 45, or if, as Russell Martin believes, they were made to look poor by an outstanding Saints performance. But ultimately, they got the job done. They got a first clean sheet at home since March, and look what that's led to, another one already. So, yeah, it wasn't amazing, but Carl Walker-Peters, it was a goal worthy of winning the match.
Yeah, absolutely. Fraser, I mean, it was a case of sort of grounding out a result, really. Not pretty, but when you take it into the context of the whole week, that's 7 points again this week, and that's got to be a real bonus.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I'd like Alfie sort of refers to that. I don't think the performance was as good as Martin maybe made it out to be. The second half performance, I think it was a good performance. We controlled the game, but like Alfie said, I don't know how much that was sort of Bristol City not sort of pushing on as much as maybe we thought they might.
Did it surprise you how they just kind of like sat back? Because you think they've got to go for it, because they had aspirations of making the top 6, and they want to be getting something out of that game, but they just seem to just sort of sit back and let us control the game.
Yeah, I don't know if they sort of took a little bit of from that Huddersfield game and sort of thought, well, the way to beat Southampton is frustrate them and then create chances towards the end of the game. But I did think they let us off a little bit lightly potentially. I think we weren't at our best that day on Wednesday, and I think we could have potentially. I mean, we could have lost that game. I mean, had it not been for Walker-Peters and Bazunu making an unreal save, and like I said, he should have scored, but it was a very great save. It was 2 moments of real sort of brilliance that won the game for us, and other than that, we didn't really do a lot. I mean, there's not really much of note else happened, especially from our perspective, and. Yeah, I think I was a bit surprised with how Bristol set up. I thought they'd try and get in behind us a little bit more. I mean, they got a bit of joy from that. But obviously, like I said, Tommy Conway sort of made a bit of a mess of it. But yeah, I was a bit surprised. I thought it wasn't the most exciting of games, and I think that's almost the sort of part of as a spectator that sort of some people in the fan base find a bit tough, is that it's not always exciting, but actually I think we've shown, I mean, this run of 11 unbeaten has shown that this way of football, when played properly and when done right, it gets results in the Championship.
Glen, you're with us just in time to discuss the referee from the Bristol City game. So your timing is impeccable. Your thoughts on Bristol City?
Obviously, I don't know what everyone else has just said, so stop me if I repeat anything. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. There aren't too many players in the Championship who dive around. It's one of the best things about not being in the Premier League is players generally they're pretty honest. You know, there's certainly not as much play acting, but that guy, I don't know what his name is, Alfie or no,
Mark Sykes.
That was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. So you know, I mean, he went about 10 yards from that tiny little shove from Adam Armstrong, and then he did the big roll and stuff when Walker Peters tackled him, I think, and we picked up 2 bookings from that, and it just seemed strange refereeing. There seems to be a thing in the Championship where virtually no contact will get you booked, but a big launchy tackle that is dangerous doesn't seem to get you. Or I mean, did the guy get booked for the forearm smash yesterday on Alcaraz? You know, it's strange refereeing. It's still better than having VAR and all the rubbish that goes on in the Premier League. That is without question, and that's a hill I'll die on. But I've managed to ignore pretty much the referees this season. There haven't been any that have completely got on my goat. But the Bristol City one was, I think it's Stroud, his name was. I think, he was a bit on the bewildering side. And it's interesting looking at social media afterwards because the Bristol fans thought he was bad.
Yeah.
And we thought he was bad. I mean, I just thought that the booking count was ridiculous in that game. I think we had 3 or 4. But it is what it is. I mean, we've always had, you know, going back donkey's years, we've always had officials that have been slightly strange some weeks, and it's just something you have to put up with from time to time and get on with it. But overall, I've found myself moaning a lot less about the officials and the decision making this year. I think there's an acceptance that we're going to get some, and we're not going to get others. And I was thinking about the other day, I could maybe think of 3 for and 3 against that would probably have gone the other way if it'd been Premier League and VAR and all that stuff. And you know, that's the very definition of evens itself out over a season, which is what everyone used to say. So I'm happy with it. And though I thought the referee was slightly strange, shall we say? Move on.
And you must have had a really good view of Kyle Walker-Peters in that goal, just from where you were, just seeing that curl in. You must have loved that.
Yeah, I was directly behind that, and you could just see it coming. The defender didn't get
not the best of balls from Adam Armstrong. Though I thought he still had a bit of work to do when he played it to him.
He did have a bit of work to do, but you know, Carl's probably got the best touch in the team. You know, with regards to controlling balls that are fired at him, and that was a great touch. But the goal was made by the defender not getting out quickly to him, and it's like, did you not see the game against Preston? You know, they must have known that when Walker-Peters appears there, he's got a left foot. So, I mean, usually you'd be quite comfortable showing a right back onto his left foot, but Carl's already proved this season, you know, in a game that was live on telly that that he can do that. So as soon as he went to shoot, I was up already. You could tell that was going to go in. Yeah.
Let's do player of the week then before we move on to preview the Watford game. Alfie, I think you abstained last week because there wasn't anybody that was worthy.
No, I abstained in error though, because I should have given it to Stewie, and I acknowledged that when Glen then mentioned it straight after, or Steve. But I will have to go for Adam Armstrong this week because he's boring. He scored the goals, but I just think that he's just find it so impressive the way he turned around. Obviously, the finish for the first goal after such an amazing move was unbelievable. But he's just so much quicker than everybody else, I think, and he just always seems to be there at the right moment. So I'm going for him.
There's going to be quite a long list potentially this week, Fraser. Can you narrow it down to one standout player from the last 2 games?
Yeah, I mean, I've just gone on about Downs and Manning, but I think actually, although he hasn't had loads to do, I think I'll go Bazunu this week. I mean, 2 clean sheets in a row. I think we conceded 2 in the last 5, and I think he had obviously difficult time last season, as did a lot of players, and Martin sort of stuck by him. And he's just for someone so young to be asked to play this way, I think he's so brave on the ball, and his distribution has been really, really impressive lately. So I think he's had some crucial saves, crucial moments. I think Bazunu deserves a shout.
Yeah, and as we say, that first goal yesterday, just kind of like starting from the back with him, and that was exactly what we want to see from Russell Martin's football. Glenn, who would be your standout performer this week?
I'm glad someone mentioned Ryan Manning, because I thought that was his best game for us by a long, long way. He actually looked like a defender who wanted to defend. He was getting out to the winger, and he didn't do that so well against Bristol, but he did it well against Cardiff. I'm going to go very left field and mention two guys who have never done it for me whatsoever. That's Joe Aribo and Sekou Mara. No, absolutely, because they both, we've talked about substitutes before, and when Ryan Fraser was coming on and actually contributing something and making an impact. And I remember mentioning myself that when Sekou Mara gets his chances, he needs to actually do something, whether he gets given 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever. And he did that, and so did Joe Aribo. Now the thing for the both of those is to do it again, is to do it next time, and then you're not seen as a liability. Then whenever they come on, you're not, I'm not sat there thinking, oh my God, not these guys. Similar to James Bree. James Bree was one that I always thought was a bit of a liability, and then he came in, he played that game. And then he did well in the second game, did well in the third game, and suddenly when he comes on now, you're thinking, well, he's a decent defender. Let's keep that going. So, Joe Aribo, I think, coming on for Stuart Armstrong as the sort of most advanced of the three midfielders, if you like. That's probably his position. And I mean, the caveat to this, of course, is that the game was dead, and Cardiff were kind of just looking for the final whistle and starting to walk home because they didn't have a train. But so they've got to impact. They've got to impact a game where it's close. That's the sort of like the next phase. But the pair of them, I was pleasantly surprised with what they contributed to the game against Cardiff.
These are strange times. That's 2 clean sheets at home, and Joe Aribo nominated for Player of the Week.
Get him in.
Who'd have thought that? This weekend, it's a relatively short trip to Watford, and to help us preview that game, I'm pleased to say that we're going to be joined by Pete from the Watford podcast, which is Do Not Scratch Your Eyes. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for joining us tonight. The first thing we need to talk about is that wonder goal from Wesley Hoyt at the weekend. I'm not going to swear, but what the hell?
Yeah, no, it was a delight. And well, of course it was. We'd had a penalty saved earlier on to keep us in the game or keep it 1-1. And then he wellied it from about 45 yards. And Valerian Ismail, our manager, and still our manager, because he always has to kind of clarify these things with Watford, came out and said, yeah, well, we knew he comes out a long way, so we've been planning to do. Yeah, right, of course you had. In fairness, we played a couple of weeks ago against Leicester, and their goalkeeper comes out like beyond their centre backs. So I can believe that they went, well, maybe give it a go, and he did. So yeah, Wesley, who is he quite likes himself. I imagine tomorrow he'll like himself even more at the training ground.
It was just a quote, like you say, from the manager. He says, "I'm not surprised. It's a drill we face all the time." Like he's just pinging them in every week. That's not the player that we had at Southampton.
We also planned to concede the penalty, save it, and then the subsequent. Yeah, of course we did. Never mind.
I mean, let's be honest. That was one of the better games of the season, right? A win away at a playoff rival. You got to be happy with how that played out.
I'm delighted at the phrase "playoff rival," to be quite frank, because until we got that win, we've not even been within crikey telescope distance of the playoffs. We had only won one. I mean, we beat Swansea the other week. Prior to that, we hadn't won an away game since February. So we've now won 2. So that's great. And things are starting to improve. We started off the season really badly. I say really badly. We were 4-0 up after 45 minutes against QPR. But what we really kind of all went, are they really that bad? And the answer was yes, now known as the Gareth Ainsworth effect, of course. And then we kind of just had games where we would play well, but just always miss out or lose by the odd goal or not break people down. We got right royally stuffed at Leeds. We got our trousers and everything handed to us at Sunderland, but we just didn't turn up in those games. And then since not the last international break, but the one before that block of 6 games, we went unbeaten. 3 wins, 3 draws, but an absolute turning around of the Titanic that was our season, heading in the traditional fashion that Titanic seasons do. and more than anything, that's because of Jake Livermore, who's come into the middle of the park. We've had him since the start of the season, but clearly fitness or whatever it was, and he has played out of his skin, the gent. So we're now 9 games with 1 defeat, which was away at Leicester. So otherwise, we would be looking at the weekend with a fair amount of intrepidation, I would say.
So you must be quite confident going into the weekend then, because I mean you're 3 points off the playoffs now, and if it's all starting to click, then this is a game that you can look forward to.
I don't think confidence is the natural emotional state of Watford fans. Basically, our fight or flight or sack the manager mechanism is kind of normally set high, and in this instance, we know that what we've got. I mean, what we are is one of those teams, and it could be like yourselves, but obviously you're having a good season, whereby that second season in the Championship having come down, especially as we'd only gone back up for a year, we only had 2 years worth of parachute money. So we've seen an absolute shredding of the wages, and I appreciate nobody watches finance, they just watch the football, but it's making this particular team, strangely, especially now this turn of results, a lot more likable than a lot of teams have been for about the last 4 seasons, whereby it's been the football has been poor. Unsurprising when you fire your manager every, is it a Tuesday? Well, go and fire him then. And it's been sort of this now. We've got a younger team. We've got certainly a less expensive team. We've still got some flair in there, genuine flair for this division, and it's starting to be likable. But confident, no, I'd say we're still in the pragmatic camp, but we are starting to like the team first. Then we'll get to the overconfidence at a later stage, in order that our hope is then dashed.
Do you think, given the new contract to the manager, do you think that had any effect on the results? Because it was, as you say, it was a pretty awful start to the season, and then they come out and offer him a new contract. You're like, okay, well, maybe they're sticking by him, or is that? Am I just reading the headlines? Is there more to it than that?
When you haven't got the money to sack yet another manager, there's only one direction to go in. We sold £50 million worth of talent in the summer, and I appreciate I'm answering your question indirectly, but this is kind of where it goes to. In Saar and Pedro, and we bought in £50,000 Tom Ince, not Paul Ince, thank Christ. But anyway, and it was like, and then we've gone and bought this 1.3 million Danish lad who does nothing outside of the box. And no, fair play, he started to actually think I could do some link up play yesterday, but very, very basic stuff, and that's pretty much been it. The rest is waifs and strays, and people have been bought in that regard. So in relative terms, what I think the management saw was the fact that we have had an absolutely chronically awful culture in the dressing room. Player power. I mean, you just have a look at the managers who've gone, and how many times they've downed tools and gone, I'm not going to work for him, I'm not going to play for him, which kind of seems understandable, really. If you know that actually your manager is basically on a temp contract, you're probably not going to listen that much. They liked what they saw. He's a fearsome character, he's quite stern and straightforward. He's got everybody on point. He bought them in a week early, had a 7-week pre-season, all at the training ground, no going away, no expense, just thrifty, do it right. And I think the ownership looked and saw what he's done and like what he's done with what he's got, which is a much reduced canvas to what our previous managers have been playing with. But hopefully what we're seeing is a little bit more than the sum of its individual parts, whereas over the last 4 seasons, completely the other way around. Expensive people who just got a huff if they got asked to do something.
I remember those pictures of the Watford players turning up for pre-season, and everyone's like, "What? Really? So early?" Glenn, what have you made of Watford? I mean, we've had some great games against them over the years. I think last time we played them, it was that Che Adams goal that you referenced earlier on, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Was the last time we played them away.
Yeah, and everyone, of course, remembers the Shane Long goal after 7 seconds or whatever it was. So yeah, Watford have always been an interesting club to play against. I must admit, since the managerial merry-go-round started with these new owners, I kind of gave up following Watford a little bit, because I never really knew what was going on, and the managers never lasted long enough to make any sort of impression on me. But it's interesting what you say about the team being more likable now. That's definitely something that happens when you offload the high wage earners that got you relegated in the first place.
Big salaries, big egos, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's interesting that you say
thing with the
likeable.
managers- the thing with the managers, and I always, sorry to butt in, but I always have to clarify,
That's right.
is that, and people look at the owners, is that as Watford, and I appreciate you've had a long history, as have we. Ours has not necessarily been that magnificent, and we've never won a major trophy. Our biggest glory period was 6 years in the top flight under Graham Taylor, an FA Cup final, and two FA Cup semi-finals. Since the Potsos came in and started doing this, sack them, move them out. We've had 6 seasons in the Premier League. We've had an FA Cup final, albeit getting absolutely gubbed by Man City, but hey, and two cup semi-finals. So they've kind of recreated it. What happened about that 4 years ago was we hit that FA Cup final, and certain contracts and relationships sort of broke down at the club a little bit. There was supposed to be bonus payments that didn't make. You saw people downing tools. You saw a season where we, kind of fell out the bottom of the Premiership, and it was sort of, okay, that went wrong. Because what we stopped doing was the other side of it, which is moving players on and bringing the next lot in, because you've got to be a conveyor belt. Otherwise, if you're forcing players to either stay there or not giving them the bonuses, they're going to sit there and they stink the place out. And that's where it sort of went wrong. The first 6 years, I mean, we have to say, hands up, we went, my God, we've won the lottery. Until we saw Man City and Newcastle and went, oh no, we should have gone for the Euro Millions. But it's it is what it is.
Yeah, I find it interesting you mentioned the word likeable, and then we're all talking about Wesley Hoyt, because he was kind of symptomatic of where Saints started to crash. 2017-18, we had the transfer windows from hell, bringing in him, Mario Lemina, Guido Carrillo. So that was sort of 65 million down the pan on nothing. I mean, Wesley, he was at the physical attributes, decent in the area, that ping with his left foot, which we saw at the weekend, but obviously thought he was miles better than he actually was. And I quite fancy him for a mistake this weekend, because he'll be keen to prove how brilliant he is. And I can just imagine him doing something stupid, like trying to dribble out of defence and show everybody that he's the next coming of Virgil van Dijk, which is what he was supposed to be when he signed for us. So we'll see. Yeah, we actually signed him to replace Van Dijk, who we knew was going to leave. Let's get another Dutchman in. Yeah, that worked.
He has come in. I mean, you understand what I mean when I say he loves himself a bit. I mean, he does. I mean, for the first 3 months, I wasn't convinced, but then I saw his wife, and that more than pushed me over the line. But in this season, he's going to be up there for player of the season or thereabouts. He's been handed the armband primarily because our goalkeeper captain, which is a dreadful combination of things to have with the latest ruling, because he's been booked about twice for running 60 yards to say, I'm the only one who can talk with you. Oh, here's a yellow card. And then he got sent off against Leicester. And he's been doing things simply, and he's been doing it well. So I hope I feel like he's calming down. He's certainly, I think, getting very good reviews for what he's doing. I think he's bringing a lot to us in terms of leadership. And I think Jake Livermore coming in as well gives him another person who doesn't really need an armband in order to actually lead. And that's another thing that we've missed for those years, definitely.
Alfie, a full week to work on things for Russell Martin. That's going to be a relief after a busy week.
Yeah, and after obviously losing a couple of bodies as well, I suppose, with Ross and Camadine. So I suppose that'll be a little bit refreshing. I don't think it's going to be easy, though, is it? Because you're just looking back at Watford's results now. I mean, they haven't lost a game apart from Leicester, which they conceded 2 late goals in, and it's Leicester who are running away to the top of it. They haven't lost a game since the start of October. So it's going to be interesting. I've been to Vicarage Road before, so I'm sort of looking forward to the visit as well. And I'm quite intrigued to see what the front three that Russell Martin settles on, because I think I can pick the rest of the team quite comfortably. I think probably all can. But it'll be interesting to see for me if Che Adams keeps his place, if he goes with Sam Edozie, plays a more natural wide man. But they're going to have to come up with a solution, because as we know, we're not going to have Ross or Camadine until probably the end of the transfer window. So unless they get somebody in early doors in January, which didn't sound like the plan, we're going to be without a few.
Do you agree, Fraser? There isn't really anybody that's played themselves out of the team this last week. It's going to be a few interesting decisions come 2:00 on Saturday to see who slots in and who starts up front.
Yeah, definitely, and I think Alfie's right. I think the only run really is potentially sort of whether you go a Dozy or out wide. I think where it's an away game and sort of what Watford might look to do, I think we might benefit from having some pace out wide or someone that can carry the ball a bit. I mean, Adams did all right yesterday. He worked hard enough. He didn't do anything remarkable, but he did better than he has done probably more recently. I think, but like I said earlier, and like I think Alfie referred to, I think that shape is not going to be used every game. That sort of 4-4-2 diamond shape, and I think I think there's places up for grabs in the front line, and it'd be interesting to see what Martin decides to do. I think the other thing, Pete, is I would say that having your pants pulled down by or trousers pulled down by Sunderland at Sunderland happens to the best of us. So
You're in good company.
yeah, wouldn't worry about that one too much.
Yeah.
We are referring to a football match in this scenario, aren't we?
Pete, I mean, how are they going to set up for this game? What sort of a game are we going to expect, and who do we need to look out for on Saturday?
We play a 4-3-3 almost exclusively until in the last couple of games we've kind of reverted to a back five when we're looking to hold on to the game. We did it yesterday, which basically gave everybody kind of heart murmurs, but they did it well. But we go with a 4. You will probably see Hoot as the left-sided centre-back. Undoubtedly you will do, because he's the only one with a left peg in that particular role. Ryan Porteous next to him, who's been a bit iffy but done well over the last couple of games. We will probably see basically Hamer in goal rather than Bachmann, because he was out for the Norwich game that we played, but he kept him out. And he's been talking about changing the captaincy because of the things that everybody's been talking about this. Right side, you'll see a guy called Ryan Andrews. He's the son of a former player of ours, Wayne Andrews. So, you know, a little bit of royalty there. Left side will be Jamal Lewis. So that's playing as a back 4, but the wing backs get on. They also occasionally do that kind of inverted thing where we all pretend that we're now Pep Guardiola, but we're really not. Jake Livermore sits in front. If he lasts 90 minutes, we look much better. He went off on 60 minutes against Leicester. We conceded in the 75th, and then there was a penalty at the end. And it wasn't all down to him, but hey, you do the math. In front of him, you'll probably see Kayembe, Edo Kayembe, who's a player who was brought in 2 years ago, hasn't really done very much, and he's typically played in a more defensive position, but he's playing in as a number 8, along with a Canadian international guy called Ishmael Kone, who hit a stonking goal to turn it around when we were 2-0 down at home on Tuesday to Norwich. We play those 2 number 8s pretty side specific, and he inverts them all the time. So Kone on the left, who's right-footed, Kayembe on the right, who's left-footed. Imran Louza hasn't got inside of the team because he's an expensive luxury player who would be lovely to be in the Premiership, but doesn't seem to think that he belongs to be where he is, if that makes sense. Wide right, we'll see either Yasser Asprilla or Tom Ince, getting his name right, who they kind of rotate around. You either get, this Colombian wunderkind who scored the winner by going around the keeper with a ridiculous oblique angle, and he's like a Poundland Phil Foden for me, or you get Tom Ince, who gives you a lot of professionalism, and he came on and helped see out the game yesterday against Hull, who were really good to look at and had lots of players to run at you. And wide left, either Mateus Martins he started the season, he would cut in and put that kind of curling ball into the far post and did it very nicely. But Ken Sema, who most people in the Championship will have seen, who's more of an orthodox left winger, that's given us more kind of get to the line and pull it back, because this gentleman that we've got, Mileta Rajovic, is a quintessential big number 9 in the box, doesn't do much outside of it. So it'll be a 4-3-3 and kind of we'll see how it goes. But I mean, hopefully it'll just be, I heard you talking about, the Premiership and the Championship. Hopefully it'll just be good Championship fare, because that's the thing that's made this more likable, is each game it's people going blood and thunder. And, if you score or you concede a goal, you're not checking the screen first. Makes all the difference.
That's true. It's true. Pete, before we let you go, I'm going to trouble you for a score prediction, but I'll go around the screen first. So, Fraser, you've got the honour of going first with your score prediction for Watford, please.
I'm going to go quite optimistic. I think I'm going to go 3 clean sheets in a row, 2-0 Saints.
Okay, Glenn?
I feel that Watford are in the playoff chasing sort of pack, similar to Cardiff, Bristol City, Birmingham. Birmingham were at the time; they're not so much now. Who, I feel that we'll be too good if we play properly with no complacency, and we go in and look to get the job done from the first whistle. I just think we'll have a little bit too much. So I'm going to go for a narrow 1-0.
Okay, Alfie, your first trip to Vicarage Road?
Yeah, I like the way he talks about the teams. I think it will make for an interesting game. I think they'll probably, like say, 4-3-3 versus 4-3-3 will be well matched, I think. So I'm actually going to say a 2-2 draw. So I think they'll be a good side.
Okay, and Pete?
On our one, we don't let people say 1-1, so I'll say 1-1. For the freedom and the fact that it will absolutely incense my fellow podcasters back there. Yeah, 1-1. Why not?
Brilliant. Listen, that was really useful. Thanks for coming on, and enjoy the weekend. Good luck for the rest of the season. I'm sure we'll catch up next time we play. So cheers, Pete.
Absolutely. Safe travels, anybody who's coming up. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. A couple of bits before we finish, Alfie. Obviously, one of the big stories this week was Ross Stewart, and unfortunately, when the team news came out on Wednesday, I think it was, and he wasn't on the bench, we then all started to ask the questions, and unfortunately, it wasn't the answer that we were hoping for.
Yeah, a little bit of a roller coaster, I suppose, because obviously we saw the team Wednesday, and then Russell Martin after the game said that he hopes it's not too bad. We confirmed then that it's not an Achilles injury. It's not the same injury. So that is good news because he's not going to be another 8 or 10 months. But ultimately, I think it's a hamstring muscle injury, which is pretty common when you've been, you haven't been pushed for 10 months and you're really getting back into it now. And I think it occurred at the end of the Huddersfield game, or forgive me if I've named the wrong team there. So he's going to be out until the end of January, I reckon. And it is a blow, isn't it? It's really disappointing for him. I think what Russell told us about it was that Ross really feels like he's let Southampton down. He feels like he's let his teammates down. He's let the manager down. And obviously, we all know that isn't the case. It's one of those unfortunate things. But I suppose the pressure of being that deadline day signing and having the £10 million spent on you, and fans needing you to come and sort of save their team can get to you. So he'll have all the support around him that he needs. But yeah, I think it's a hamstring injury separate to the Achilles, which is good news. But it'll probably be till the end of January he'll be out.
It's a shame.
We had a very similar thing with Tino Livramento, didn't we? After he had a the long knee injury, he came back and then he did his hamstring, and he had to have another sort of like minor op, I think, if memory serves, before he got back to it again. And he's obviously flying now, as anyone who saw Newcastle's game yesterday will testify. So yeah, it's just one of those things that occasionally happens after a long injury. So I wouldn't be too down about it. I'm sure he'll make his way back in good time.
And I guess pose the question to Russell. Sorry, Martin. That but obviously it could be seen as a risk signing a striker who is going to be out for a couple of months, and that is a good point for anybody who makes it. At the end of the day, if you need the £5 now, but I think Russell's answer was that he wasn't a short-term signing. All the conversations he says they had this summer with Jason and with Darren Mowbray, the head of recruitment, is that they always circle back to Ross being the number one option. And yes, you can probably point to Joel Perreault and the success he's having at Leeds, and I think maybe there is a case for that, but perhaps the money wasn't available to sign him at the right time. And when the money became available, after Nathan Teller left the club, they moved on Ross, but they insist that he was their number one option the whole time. So look, they'll give him the time. He's on a long-term deal, and like Glen said, hopefully we'll see him back.
And the way we're playing at the moment, Fraser, and this run of unbeaten games, this is the ideal time in a way for him to get himself fit. It's not like we're crying out for him. It would be nice, and yeah, we might have scored a couple more goals on Saturday had he been playing up front. But we're winning games, so he's going to be allowed that time.
Yeah, I think there's no point in rushing him back. We spent £10 million on him, and there's no point in rushing him and let him recover. I think I do. If anything happens to Adam Armstrong, I do worry about the goals drying up because he's the only one that's scoring on a regular basis. But as long as Adam Armstrong's in the team, I think we'll be okay. I think Ross Stewart is almost the difference maker in the sort of the Huddersfields, the Rotherham games where, well, we hope that's what we hope it'll be anyway, is that difference maker where he'll go and get the second or third. Or we're not, because we don't, I mean, I say we don't score out of anything. Adam Armstrong and Carl Walker-Peters' goals both sort of came from very little yesterday, and midweek. But I think we don't get those goals where we have to be we almost have to be perfect to score some of our goals. And I think there's a lot to be said for us, a striker who can sort of just poach you a couple or be a bit of a box threat, be a bit of a menace, because we don't massively have that. I don't think Adams is really performing that role when he gets a chance at the moment. So I think he can bide his time. And I don't think we'll. Alfie knows much more about this, but I don't think we'll go out and desperately try and find a striker in January. I don't know what happens if Che leaves, which is probably, I don't know, it seems very likely in January. But Yeah, I think we can afford to wait for him, and hopefully long term will be a very good signing for us.
You have to take everything Russell says with a pinch of salt, but he did say that the plan at the moment is for Cherms to stay the season and then presumably leave at the end of his deal.
Yeah.
Is that Che's plan or is that Saints' plan?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. They're two different plans, aren't they? I imagine. Yeah, let's see what comes up.
The other news today, of course, Glen, was the FA Cup third round draw. Did you catch that earlier? It's
Walsall or Alfreton Town, isn't it?
Alfreton Town or Walsall. Yeah, that was that must have been the game that was called off because of the fog, I think, wasn't it? In the third round. I mean, that shouldn't pose us too many problems, he says, but
no, it shouldn't do. But it'd be nice if the non-league side got through, wouldn't it? Because they're level 6, so they're not even whatever the Vauxhall Conference is called these days, National League. They're National League North, so that's cool. So it'd be great if they got through. And they'll probably be disappointed that we're not a Premier League club anymore. But too bad, lads. So I don't know what division are Walsall in now. Are they League 2?
League 2, yeah,
League 2. So yeah, I mean it'll be an opportunity for the Joe Rebos of this world to come in and play, and we've got to do better than we did against Gillingham because that was pathetic. So but a home game makes it a little bit easier, obviously. And I hope Russell Martin doesn't go with the 11 changes. I hope there's a bit of a more pragmatic approach, and Joe Aribo plays instead of Stuart Armstrong. That's fine, and Sekou Maro has a game up front. That's fine. But I hope we don't go for the youth team option, and like we don't care, because we don't want to get everyone to turn up at St Mary's and play pathetically and get knocked out by a League 2 or a non-league side. So it's a decent draw. I mean, it's better than the draw Eastleigh have got, isn't it?
Well, we might get Eastleigh in the fourth round. You never know.
Yeah, they got. Is it Newport away? They've got.
Yeah,
I wonder if Ruben Sellers will still have a job after that. Knocked out by Eastleigh. How ironic.
We've already spoken about a club not being able to afford to sack a manager, haven't we, tonight? So, I must say as well, good luck to the women's team, because it's the Women's FA Cup, which is, I think it's this coming weekend, Sunday the 10th. It's a 2:00 kickoff, and they travel to Portsmouth. So we'll be able to talk about that one, hopefully in a positive light next weekend. We haven't done this for a while, but as it's Christmas, we're going to do shout-outs for anyone who leaves us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I mean, it is an absolutely shameless plug, but it really helps us to get found on the podcast apps, and we genuinely do love hearing from newcomers. So maybe you're listening to the podcast for the first time, or perhaps you've just joined us in the last couple of weeks. Anybody who leaves us a review and a rating this week will get a shout out on next week's podcast. That's a promise. So head to Apple Podcasts, find the Total Saints podcast, and leave us a rating and a review on there. And if you're feeling generous, you can also leave us a rating on Spotify. Thank you. We've covered a lot this week on the podcast. Thanks again to Pitter Self Drive for sponsoring this episode. They offer cars, vans, trucks, and minibuses for flexible short-term or long-term rentals with a 24-hour drop-off service. And as I said at the start, they're offering TSP listeners 10% off your rental with the code Total Saints. That's all one word. You can use that code when booking online, or just quote the code if you're booking over the phone. You can find out more or get in touch. Head to pitterselfdrive.co.uk or give them a call on 02380 474 443. Don't forget, you can follow the Total Saints podcast on all the social media platforms. It's at Total Saints Pod. We do like hearing from you throughout the week, so feel free to drop us a DM on any of the socials, or email us via the website if you've got something to share. We're also on Patreon, where you can find out more about supporting the podcast with a monthly contribution. Just head to patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 tiers on there that range from £5 to £20 per month, and each of the tiers comes with different perks, including some shouts to those patrons in the Francis Benali and the Mick Shannon tier. So thanks to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, and Drew Dyer in the Francis Benali tier. And also thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Matt Rose, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, and Matt Hall in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Fraser. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Alfie. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.